Thanks, Deborah. It's a real pleasure to be here. I think this is my third time at Event Space, and every time when these things go out, there's just a zillion hits because there's so many people in the audience with B&H's huge YouTube presence. So today I wanted to talk about photography and the things that you can do to improve it. And one of the things that is being a little bit ignored lately has been flash, especially off-camera flash. So a little bit about myself. I was a wedding photographer for 20 years and I shot 1,000 weddings, over 1,000. And when I started out, we started out with Mamiya C220s. I don't know if you know what those are, but they're twin lens reflex, and you had 12 shots on a roll of film, and then there was no meter. Then I upgraded to Hasselblad, which had no meter, but my teacher taught me how to meter in my head, which is really kind of interesting. He would just walk around, and I could probably tell you right now that this is probably at ISO 800 f4 at 60, where I'm at right now. And he could do it too, anywhere. He could just walk around. And I did a school at Texas Schools one time, and a guy followed me around with an incident light meter, and I was able to hit it. Of course, this is after 10 years of practice. But I never needed a meter. And the reason that is because Rocky taught me how to feel the light, which was a very interesting phenomenon. He says, you know when a room is 71 degrees, and you know when it's 73. You know the difference between the 2 degrees. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you should definitely know the difference between f4 and f2.8. or whatever. And then you have, of course, the exposure latitude on film. So he would just take me around to different places, and he'd go, how does this feel right now? And I'd say, I don't know, 30 at 4? No, 15 at 2.8. Do not focus on the question. He was Chinese. So, But after a while, I got really good at metering without a meter. And I shot Hasselblads for probably 12 years of my career, which was incredible when you think about today's technology, because you had 24 shots per roll. And then you remember how it rolled on a Hasselblad? You'd have to lick it, and then you'd have to turn, and then crank. And then, it was just nutty, but it's extremely slow. And then we got into, I was one of the first wedding photojournalists that went into 35 millimeter film. And people thought I was crazy, like, oh, he's just a snapshot photographer. But I was all about capturing the moment, which is the most important thing, which is one of the basic elements I'm going to talk about today in photography, is capturing the moment. And that has flash written all over it. Then after that, as my career was starting to wind down and I was starting to get pretty tired of the reception music, it's all within 1 year. I think it was 1992. We Are Family, Chicken Dance. No, that was before that. But anyway, it was always the same songs, and it was driving my mind crazy, so I had to find a new career. Luckily enough, that was around the time that film started to go into digital, and I started a lab called Pictage, which became the largest the largest professional photo lab online in the country I think we were within 6 months. And during that time, I was able to see this is still film, by the way, I was able to see all the film that came in from photographers around the world. And we had probably 500-700 photographers that used us. We had 170 employees at our peak. And I was seeing what they were delivering as we were on the cusp of film to digital. And the thing that I noticed most was that the photos were just getting completely wiped out. And that's simply because of contrast. And so you can't really go too far into digital because of its slender dynamic range in those days without using flash to kind of break up and diffuse the light. Now you can sort of, but you still don't get the directional. So I'm going to teach you how to do on-camera and off-camera flash. But so what wound up happening is we got into cameras that would do really good at 1600. We got into the Sony a7S II, which I shot at, I've never been able to shoot at more than 24,000, 32,000 ISO. Haven't been able to, because even with a 200 millimeter 2.8 inside a dark reception hall, I'm still getting like 1/500th of a second at 2.8. So I've never really needed to go that much further than ISO 32,000. But what I'm not able to get is the timing, the background, the moment, and the color balance clean all at the same time. So I want to talk about, when you look at a photograph that has a high impact, what are the elements of that photograph? And so that is composition, timing, and lighting. And so what I mean about composition would be the background. Am I rule of thirds? Is my head in the center with a lot of head space? That's real basic, right? You want to be rule of thirds or whatever. But you also want to have an interesting background that either blurs out or kind of graphically curves out or whatever. That's called composition. Is the background attractive? Timing is extremely important if you're a, well, sports photographer, nature photographer, wedding photographer. Timing is the key. And a lot of your pictures can get completely wiped out because the timing sucked, and I'll show you some examples of that. And then, of course, comes lighting. We can't do a shot without lighting, and the issue with these high-speed ISO cameras is you'll get lighting, but it won't be the shape and the color that you're looking for. So let's talk about timing. Timing is something that really applies to anything with on-camera flash. And what I love about on-camera flash, provided that you can make it look like it's not flash, it's absolutely gorgeous. So in this picture here, that shot on the left is a great moment. It's a fantastic shot. I shot that with the 6300 at f1.4. I thought, wow, that's really cool, but look at the lighting. Okay, we've got the glitter globe going, and at f1.4, back at the 6300, you really couldn't nail a shot that low light. Now you can, by the way. I'm shooting the A7R3 in Sedona on Monday, and I shot it just here in New York last week, and man, in low light, like -1 EV or whatever, it can eye track anybody moving around and lock on it. And those of us who are portrait or event photographers know that the eyeball's got to be in focus. So your waist ratio when you're shooting the new cameras due to focus errors is almost nothing. I shot the A9. By the way, this program, or I am not sponsored by Sony. I've just always been a big fan. I've never received $1 from Sony, so everyone goes, oh, the A6000 is the Gary Fong camera. It's just because I was a big fan of it. But with the new cameras, you lose very few. I shot the A9 for an entire day and did 7,200 images and had only 75 images that were out of focus, which is pretty incredible. But it doesn't get rid of your lighting problem. And your lighting problem you have to control. And the problem when you're an available light photographer is the light controls you. You don't control the light. You're helpless at the mercy of whatever lighting there is at that moment. So on-camera flash is beautiful so long as it's not visible. And that shot on the right, just imagine all of your shots at a wedding looking exactly like that, perfectly in focus and beautifully exposed. Now, on-camera flash has a really terrible reputation because of that harsh shadow. And the reason that harsh shadow is there, it goes back to the earliest days of photography when we needed a lot of light in order to get a good exposure. And so the head of the flash unit is shaped like a parabolic reflector. And that is the same shape as a flashlight or a car headlight. It's exactly the same shape because it directs the beam to the point of more power. Who wants to lose light everywhere else when I'm not going to see the deer in front of me, right? I don't need to see all the background or make it look like daylight. So we focus the light straight forward in order to optimize the power. In the very, very old days, when film was literally ISO 1, I had to look this up on Wikipedia, they had to use explosives to expose a photo. And even then, the exposures were, I don't know, they were like 10 minutes, which is why you see those old-time family photos and nobody's smiling, because no one can smile for 10 minutes. And that's the reason it looked like that. Then flash came, and everybody died. No, but they used literally dynamite to expose photos. And that's because the sensitivity of the imaging material was so unreactive to light. And now we've got it where it's extremely ISO friendly. So that's flash, direct flash. And then, so this is the pattern that comes out of your parabolic light reflector. And that's why every picture taken with flash looks like it's a deer in the headlights, simply because we're using a parabolic reflector. And so this is the light sphere. And the light sphere sends light out all around the room. And this was patterned after the lampshade. A lot of people ask me, how'd you invent this thing that sold over 1 million units and is used on NASA space missions? It's really interesting because Dennis Reggie, I'm sure you know who he is, he went over to photograph Bloomberg and he pulled out his light sphere and, to take this picture in the room. And he goes, Bloomberg says, oh my God, is that a Gary Fong? And he said, well, yeah, it is. And he goes, Yeah, I love mine. He goes, well, I was the best man at his wedding. He goes, you know him in person? What's he like? Anyway, so the light sphere was my little idea to just basically create a lampshade out of a flash unit. We don't need a lot of power anymore, right? So why not be really inefficient with a light and spread it out like a cloudy day? And that was the idea I had when I was sitting in my hotel room looking at a lampshade, and I thought, you know why the light's so beautiful? Is because the light goes up to the ceiling. You see it over a lampshade. You see a hot spot right up there. And then the fabric around the light gives it that wraparound fill, and it's a perfect ratio. The light sphere is the only lighting attachment that has a removable top. This is something that we did as a utility patent a long time ago, and I wanted the removable dome because, well, if you're shooting direct, I wanted to give you a nice 5-inch round shoot-through diffuser, but also if you're shooting in a low ceiling like this, you might have too much overhead bounce flash coming directly up into the flash. So if you're bouncing, so this is a light sphere, and if you're bouncing, well, that's the direct flash versus light sphere, and we'll do this live when the model gets here. But this is what bounce looks like. And a lot of photographers, I see them at weddings, and they obviously don't want direct flash, so they bounce it. And this is the problem with bounce, is that you get that light. The single source is from directly overhead and nowhere else. So how are the eyes going to light up? I mean, look at the difference between the eyes and how they light up. And the other thing that you might not really know until you have a lot of experience with this, like when shooting outdoors, flash is very important because it increases the color saturation of the fabric. And very few people know this, but if you take two pictures, someone's wearing a patterned dress or something like that, side by side, the colors in the dress will have much more impact. And that's simply because the light coming in is perfect. And you know what's really nice about flash is that it's a constant temperature. It's exactly the same as daylight. So you don't have a problem when you're going into modifying your images through RAW and trying to get the color balances to match. That's really tough, by the way. And I'm going to teach you how to work that also to get your front to match the rear when you're shooting indoors. But on the left, you have a direct flash. In the middle is bounce, and on the right is the light sphere. Now, this was designed by me to give you the perfect ratio between ceiling and fill. And you'll notice that there's these little rings here, right? Have you ever heard of this called the Fong dong? Someone called it one time, and it's when it had the dome, and it... Anyway, so I came up with these rings, and I couldn't come up with a name for them. They're really efficient because the light goes through and it, you know, wraps around the rings. I don't know. Light rings. I don't know. But anyway, what happens is if I didn't have that there, then it wouldn't wrap around like that. Now watch. It's actually a clear material. And that's one thing that people kind of don't really think about. It's like all the other diffusers have a white dye put into them. And the problem with the white dye is whenever you put anything to reduce the light, you're going to reduce the light, right? We didn't want to lose any light through the sides. So we made the material clear, then we put the rings in, then we bead blasted it, and then we made it so you could collapse it into this tiny little disc, which is what's so cool about it. And I'll show you how great it mounts. But so that was the inspiration for the light sphere. And this is it with a dome on. So the beauty of using this is, look at this shot right here. This doesn't look like flash at all. And what I really like about, say, if you're editing in Lightroom, oh my God, first of all, that's one reason why I won't shoot in RAW. I'm one of those few people that don't, just because I'm too lazy to have to process every single image all the way through, but also because these new cameras, I mean, the new A7R3 has a 14-stop dynamic range, which is pretty incredible for mid-range detail. What happens with flash is it reduces the contrast because you're filling the entire room with a poof of light. And that makes your photographs really very, very much uniform in color because they're all daylight, and with exposure because TTL is insanely accurate right now these days. Okay, so let's talk about composition. Now, composition is something that you would take for an entire semester in photography school. They would teach you where the subject goes. They would teach you rule of thirds, uncluttered backgrounds. After a while, when you're shooting, you start to get a real good taste of this. And a lot of us are shooting these really wide open apertures because of the beautiful soft bokeh behind the subject, which is nice. But you're still going to have compositional lines. Or if you have a really great moment, there might be an exit sign right behind them, or something, that'll really blow your shot. Flash came out with a godsend called high-speed sync, and it allows your camera to synchronize all the way up to 1/8,000th of a second. And that has been huge, because in the old days it was 160, 1/200, 1/250th of a second. That's all you could do. Well, outdoors, if you're shooting at, say, ISO 100, you're forced to shoot at something like f11 outdoors in a midday sun. So that's pretty tough, because it's going to look like a snapshot. It's going to look like you took it from your cell phone. Why do we buy these really cool lenses and cameras if you're going to be stuck shooting without flash outdoors, right? So this is the setup that I have here, which I'm a big fan of these new Godox AD 200 units. So now, but the thing about high-speed sync that is so beautiful for a photographer is now you can take that thing up to 1/8,000th of a second at ISO 100 at, say, f5.6, and it will look like nighttime, or anywhere in between. And that's the fun part we're going to have today, is I'm going to show you how to mix the two separate exposures that occur with flash. With available light, you get a single exposure, and that's it. You don't get the second exposure. But with flash, you get two. The first exposure is the flash itself. And that is around, well, actually it occurs in the middle. It depends on if you do rear shutter sync or first shutter sync. But as the ambient light curtain comes down, the flash, that blip, goes either in the beginning or the end and in rear curtain sync, but it's much faster, maybe 1/20,000th of a second. In other words, what I'm saying is when you use flash, you're literally sandwiching two images together. And that's the thing that you think as an advanced flash photographer. I'm combining two images, literally as if you're doing it in Photoshop, putting an overlay on top of a background. So you think two thoughts. Do I want my background to be more visible, like when you're shooting indoors at a wedding reception and you want to show the party and all the warmth and all that, rather than hit them with a really stark flash and make them blow out covered by darkness, which is what flash photography looks like. Or maybe you might want to be outdoors in the middle of noonday sun and you want to get all that junk darkened so it looks like nighttime. You can do anything in between, and that's the beauty of off-camera flash. And I'm going to teach you step by step how to do that. It's simpler than you think. But more complicated than you would hope, whatever that means. TTL is so awesome because you can then concentrate, shoot on manual, concentrate on what you want the background to look like. And then you just use TTL, which will give you a proper exposure, and that will give you your second exposure. Does that make sense? So the first exposure is the background. Do you want it darker or lighter than the subject? And the second one is the flash. And the flash on the subject has nothing to do with whatever's around. Okay, unless you have really overexposed backgrounds. And that's really the fun of photography. This is what brings all the photography back, because you don't need Photoshop and you don't need to do any of this stuff. And especially now with these cameras being so efficient and going up to 8,000th of a second. I mean, they can shoot to 32,000th of a second, the A9. Pretty amazing. In the old days, we used to have to use studio boxes. I had a Godard unit, and it was cost me something like $18,000, and it had, do you remember those? You'd plug it in, and then the fan, and then you had fans on the heads and all that. And those things were, I think, maybe 5,000 watt seconds. The other day, I was in Santa Monica, California, and I saw a wedding photographer who took, anyway, I was leaving the hotel and I was following this orange cord. Like, where the hell is this thing going? I was at the Casa del Mar in Santa Monica, just had lunch, and I'm like, oh, what's this cord going to? Had to follow it. crosses the bike path. So bikes are riding over the cord, and I go, like 50 yards into the sand, and there's a wedding photographer with a softbox, of all things, on a 5,000 watt-second studio unit, sand going into the fan, but also little puff of wind and the thing falls down. So then the assistant, and I've seen photographers take the sandbags out and all that just to take one shot. Wouldn't it be nice to just walk up, set it up, take it, let's try over here instead. So portability gives you that kind of creativity because you want to play. And that's the thing that's just so fun. One of these days I want to open a camera store where I'll just kind of show you this stuff and then just have 10 of these units and say, just go. Oh, God, I didn't say that on the B&H event space, did I? I'm not. No plans for a camera store. Here comes security. No. Let's talk about high-speed sync. How many of you shoot with high-speed sync? Ever? Okay, so I've got 2 people. High-speed sync is so much fun. Wait till you try it. It's just amazing. And once you get into it, you'll find any excuse to do anything with high-speed sync. Whenever you learn something new, it's just so fun. Like, my mom got one of those fruit dryers. Do you remember those? You put them in, and then it would dry the fruit and turn them into chips. We didn't eat anything that was in its natural form for months. It didn't matter. It had to be crunchy and dried. Anyway, so on the right is high-speed sync. And so when people say, oh, it's a cloudy day, or it looks like it's going to rain, we better cancel our shoot, I can shoot anywhere, anytime, and get the results I want. Bar none. I have a thing on my YouTube channel called the Ugly Room series, where I literally went around and found the most god-awful places to shoot that were really ugly and busy, and I turned them into something really gorgeous and beautiful by using my little kit that you can put in a single bag and walk around with my little flashes. So today I'm introducing the Gary Fong Snoot Skin. It is, we revolutionized lighting 13 years ago when I came up with a light sphere, and we're on the 5th generation now. I don't like to come up with iterations that are unnecessary unless they're real kind of quantum impact into something new, and I finally got it after 13 years. I wanted a system that would allow you to do everything that you wanted to do, but in a small unit. So there's the light sphere, and then I put the snoot skin inside to turn it into a snoot. The grill focuses the light, and now I've got colors coming in to modify the light, all in a single unit. And this thing folds up into a tiny little flat disc. So if you have a light sphere now, the good news is you just need to buy the little insert and stick it inside your light sphere, and you have now a full color light shaping kit. So to tell you how this works is the light sphere is the cloudy day. It's the diffusion. Whereas the snoot skin is a modifier of shape. It will make spotlights. It will make green. Purple is just combining red and blue together. And wherever you think that color would be cool, then put it on because it's really fun. Or if you just want a hair light, just put on just the grid. So I'll show you how this works. So the first part, of course, is the light sphere. And that one, I'll show you how it mounts, but it's a very, very sturdy mount, and it enables it to be able to hold any of these other pieces. This is the second part, which is called the snoot skin, and it goes inside. Now, why do we want it to go inside? Because in situations where I have a spotlight, I don't want light to hit anywhere else or it'll contaminate the light. I want to have tight control. Those of you who worked in movies or in photography studios will remember barn doors or snoots. And then this is the grill, which is, of course, the snoot itself. Well, not the snoot, but it's the grill. So see what it does is it makes the light go into a cylindrical cone only. If I were to point it at a wall, you would see just a circle. Now, why would I want a circle? Well, it's really cool when you're shooting, say, black and white headshots, but only from the side for very, very dramatic look for men smoking a pipe with a big beard. Be a great way to do a portrait of Santa. So that is, and then of course the colors. And the way I wanted to do the colors was, I just wanted to have something that you could literally just drop in and instantly change the colors. So there is red, in the basic kit, red, blue, green, And then this is CTO, full CTO. For those of you who aren't familiar with CTO, that means color temperature orange. And they come in halves or whatever, but it's a standard and you can rely on that. So that means when I'm shooting in tungsten in the 4,500 Kelvin range or something like that, and I want my foreground to match the background so that I'm not in daylight, and then everything else is warm. Or, for example, if you're shooting a sunset, if you shoot a sunset with flash and you don't use one of these, it'll look like you're standing in front of a painted background because the color of the light doesn't match. And so what you want to do is you want to have warm light with warm flash, and that's a really basic helper that'll help you a lot. What's nice about this is the color temperature is always consistent. So if your camera is doing TTL for its principal exposure, this is a perfect thing to have. Now this one we give you, anyone know what this is for?
Gray.
It's great, yeah, 18% gray. And this, if you want to have insanely accurate color, you want to have 18% gray. And the way that this works is your model or subject, if you're shooting products, will put this right in front of the subject and record your custom exposure. You can even do this with flash mixed in. And the reason why that's important is because lighting can be a number of different color temperatures. God help you with fluorescent. Every single tube is a different color temperature, right? But I might be in front of a window, there might be a red brick wall here, there might be, this is daylight balanced lighting, beautiful lighting. All of those come together and hit your subject. So once we're on here and I record that and it says 5200 Kelvin, every single shot from that point on is going to be perfect color to the millionth degree of accuracy, so long as the lighting doesn't change or the subject doesn't change. And this is something that, and then from that point on, you go to your custom white balance and you shoot in manual so that you have perfect shots. I've been really learning so much about manual photography lately. I've been hanging out with Patrick Rice-Murphy, one of the best sports photographers, legendary in the world, and he's been teaching me a lot about sports photography. And those of you who shoot sports, like especially outdoors, even indoors, the lighting doesn't change on the arena. So once you get your exposure, don't put it on any type of automatic metering, because what'll happen is if I'm a tennis player and I'm in front of one of those black tarps and I'm wearing all white, the camera does its best to try to nail it, but it'll typically throw the player into overexposure because it's trying to say, I understand that that's the subject, but you have all this black area, so I'm going to put it somewhere in the middle. Or conversely, if he was wearing all white and there was all black and there was white behind him, then it would completely shut down because all this white stuff would blind it. Remember, its goal is to give you 18% gray. What's kind of cool about the new technology, like with eye autofocus and the Sonys, is it also does exposure priority. When it knows that you're tracking an eye, even though you step in front of this big, bright window, it knows that you want that face. So it will not shut the face down, which is really cool. It's kind of like eye exposure, which I thought was pretty amazing. But there's two ways to trigger your flashes. One is the built-in way, which is called optical, working with infrared. And infrared is fine. I used it for a long time before radios came out. The thing with infrared versus radios is you have to make sure that the flash unit is pointed toward the transmitting flash. And that's tough. Every flash unit has this little, I do have a flash unit here somewhere, don't I? Oh, it's on my camera. Yes! This is what I'm like at a wedding. People go, oh God. He's got one on Yelp. Okay, so this is the optical slave receiver. Okay, so the only thing is if you don't want to buy a radio right now and you want to be able to use the flash, your camera will trip infrared, a slave signal. You just got to make sure this red thing is pointing back toward the flash. That's it. So if you're going like that, just make sure it's pointing that way or else it won't work. But with radio, it doesn't matter, because radio will go anywhere, around walls. This is line of sight. And radio will go like, I think, 100 yards away, which is pretty darn cool. So now the difference between radio is a tiny bit of cost. They're getting lower all the time. I really like these new Chinese manufacturers like Godox. They come up with this stuff that's just incredibly inexpensive. I mean, I think the radio transmitter for Godox is under $100. They're so inexpensive that keep a spare just in case it breaks. But they're very inexpensive now. And all the flashes have really gone down due to the OEMs that have been coming out. But if it comes to flash and you want to get into radio, I've got now over 1,000 videos on the Gary Fong YouTube channel. I couldn't believe it. How did I do that? I can't even remember doing any of them. But this is a Phottix. Okay, so what I give you is every single possible thing to be able to set it up, because I don't want you to buy any of my stuff and have it just sit somewhere. I want you to buy it and then take great stuff and show everybody how you use it. That's how we survive. You never see my stuff in advertising because it's all word of mouth. But on the right is the transmitter, and that transmitter, they typically have 3 different power groups. So power groups are in letters, A, B, or C. Channels are in 1, 2, 3, and 4, or 5, whatever. So just remember that power groups use letters. And the reason why they're called groups is because I can take 10 flashes and put it in exposure group A, or 1, and then on my controller I could say, A, I want you to shoot TTL. And so all 10 will transmit just enough light and then stop as soon as the sensor on the camera realizes that it's had enough flash. And so that might be your front light. You might be shooting a car or something huge. And then you might want a backlight, but that will take also 4 flashes. But the rear light you want to have in amber, and you want to have it 1 stop over. So then you would put all the rear lights on power group B, and then you would say +1 TTL, and then you would just simply sit with your fun pad and change the effects of the light everywhere on your set. And that's fun. That's called power groups. So with a minimum of, say, 3 flashes, you can have 3 different power groups, and that's fun. So I could have one that's on perfect TTL for the face with a light sphere off camera. Then I could have one behind with an amber dome giving me a beautiful hair light, which is also great. But I might want to change the exposure. So that would be group B, and I might go +++. I always start with TTL. Sometimes people go, wouldn't it be easier to shoot on manual? Yes, it would, except for finding the first shot. See, if I put it on 1.0 power full dump, I'll just go, wow, that was overexposed by 20 stops. And then I have to piecemeal wind down until I detect the perfect exposure. What I like about TTL is you hit it and it'll tell you where it was. And that's what's really nice. So, and then from that point on, I can just do plus or minus on the TTL and it works out perfect. So what happens is when you're shooting with flash in conjunction with available, remember I said think about it as 2 separate exposures, layering one on top of the other. And this is known so little that it absolutely boggles my mind, because it's one of the key principal things that professional photographers have to model in product, fashion, whatever photography. And in layering that, what I like to do sometimes is the first shot when I get to a hall, I'll take an available light photo, just available in manual. And I'll just kind of go, oh wow, this looks beautiful in 800 at 1/25th of a second at f1.4, and that's just gorgeous. So now all I need to do is put the camera manual on that setting and then put the flash on TTL, and guess what happens? It will give you the perfect blend, and that I really like. You don't have to sit there and kind of goof with it. And if it's too dark, then you just go +1, whatever. And then but it's so accurate that it takes very little time. Of course, I'm going to say that, and then all my stuff's going to break, and you're going to go, what the hell? Yeah, so that's how that's done. So, again, every single model has different ways of hooking up to radio or optical. And on my YouTube channel, you'll always find the latest stuff, because we make it a point to make sure that you are up on how all this stuff works. So, step-by-step instructions, how to use any of the radio slaves or whatever. So now really all you need to do is, if you already have a camera and a flash, just take the one flash off camera and start playing with off-camera flash. And that's where you'll have fun. That's just a ton of fun. So again, take it off flash and then do your really creative things. Now let's talk about blue skies on a cloudy day, because this is one of the things that I started that everyone just went nuts over. It's when you have a cloudy day, people say, well, let's just reschedule because I want it to be sunny. You don't need to do that anymore, because what you can do is take your camera and manually set it to tungsten white balance. Tungsten white balance will make your entire sky, everything blue. The reason that is because tungsten, or incandescent light, is very low in temperature, like 4,600 Kelvin. And so because it's so blue, because it's so orange, we have to make the camera blue to fight the orange. It's the opposite, right? So when you're in white and you put it on tungsten, it will make your white completely blue. It's weird, but it makes a ton of sense when you start to unplug your head and take your eyeballs and put them by your ears, and then, you know, shift the way that you think, because you're thinking backwards and inverse. But once you do that, blue skies on a cloudy day are so much fun to achieve. Now, this isn't a cloudy day, but it's high noon, and so it looks cloudy. Now watch what I can do. I turned the sky completely dark blue, and I gave it a glowing hair light to give you that effect. And look at how blue the water is, how blue the sky is, whereas here, it has no impact. And so you can do this for wedding photography or anything, create these blue skies on a cloudy day. Very, very simple. Just take your white balance, turn it to tungsten, put an amber disc or dome or whatever on your off-camera flash, because if I took a photo with regular flash, her face would be completely blue. Does that make sense? But when I put orange on the flash, color temperature orange, then it corrects out the blue. So I'm doing a spot color correction on wherever the light's going. And that's why we need the grid. So that's really fun. So with this, two tiny light spheres with snoots, you can create a portrait studio anywhere, anytime. And I urge you to look at my YouTube channel and look for the Ugly Room series. We found an alley just on trash collection day in London, and I did a walk around with a group, and they go, oh God, you can't possibly mean shooting here. I said, let's do it. Anywhere that I found that had a chain link fence, that was cool, because the chain link fence would go out of focus when I bokeh'd it out with an open aperture. So instead of the chain link, you saw kind of a pattern, but when I hit it with a color, it became this really cool kind of cross-hitch pattern. And there's all kinds of stuff that you can do that's just incredibly fun. So if you're shooting rock bands or whatever. So this is a single available light, which is what everyone gets when you're a available light photographer. This is what you get with one on camera and a green in the background, which I'll show you how easy that is to set up. And then this is blue, and then this is red, and then this is amber. So you don't need to go and buy the paper backgrounds anymore or anything like that. All you need to do is be able to have something that would be able to throw a gel on. And that's it. So I can do anything I want anywhere. Now in portraiture, it's very important that we have blurry backgrounds. That's why we buy the fast lenses. That's why the new iPhone X or whatever has that portrait background effect, which it'll blur out the background. And that's because it just makes it look have a lot more impact when you're shooting and you have a blurry background. The problem is, back in the days when we were at 1/250th of a second with flash, I had to shoot at f8 or f11, which I had, no choice to do. I can take a light stand or two anywhere I want where the lighting is just absolutely horrendous and turn it into something gorgeous. Like this was just a kind of a catacomb, and you'd look at it and go, ooh, it's really ugly, but with the textures on the wall, it became beautiful. So this was in just regular available light. I think it was sodium vapor light. Very interesting to try to balance out. And then this is when I set up the flashes. So you see the difference here. It still looks like there's no flash, but there's some pretty elaborate flash going on here. I've got two separately calibrated TTL lights. Now watch what happens when I come in closer. See the difference? Available light on the left and flash on the right. Again, available light controls you. You don't control the light. That's why I can just look at a scene and go, that would be pretty, but I would love to add a little bit 1/3 ratio on this side of the face, but then the hair's starting to disappear against that clutter in the background. Let's separate it from the background by putting in a hair light. And I can just go nuts with it. Like shooting executive portraiture, this is really fun. Put a grill on at exactly 3 o'clock from your subject, and it looks like, I don't know, something presidential. God, that's beautiful. By the way, this was taken right here at Javits in the middle of the trade show. And it was very, very bright all around. But I shot this at like 1/8,000th of a second. So one kind of neat thing is you can just take people as they're walking by and go, do you want a shot like this? And they go, yeah, here, now? You don't need a background or anything like that because of high-speed sync. So black and white is gorgeous when you're using off-camera flash. So just to reiterate, on-camera flash is going to give you much more of a hit rate because you will capture the moments, you won't be interrupted by bad lighting or even bad backgrounds, and off-camera flash is when you want that dramatic effect for portraiture, product shooting, or whatever. You really can't do anything spectacular without off-camera flash. People try all they can with Photoshop, but man, you got to be good to do that in Photoshop, right? So lighting is the principal handle of control. TTL is your secondary exposure, and manual is your primary exposure. Just remember those 3 basic things that the flash will take care of itself, and then you'll just have a whole ton of fun. Now, in all of my kits, I have something called the Gray Dome, and this is the different kit. This is the one that's available everywhere. We have a wedding and event kit, we have a portrait, we have a fashion kit, and we have a portrait kit. All of the kits have the gray half dome, and the reason why I made the gray half dome was because a face is not flat, and I found much greater accuracy with that. So when I used a gray card and the person turned it just even a slight bit, the exposure would change as well as the color balance. If I have a red wall there and I'm slightly angled toward the wall, it'll throw more blue in. Or if I have a, I'm in incandescent and there's daylight coming in, that's blue light, and then so it'll think it's more blue. The cool thing about the half round is that your face is half round, right? So it's being lit by light from all different sides, and this gives you the perfect color balance. And it's 100% accurate. And I love that. Now, if you don't want to do it like right then and there, you can take the first picture like that and then have your subject put it down, then later go in with Lightroom or Photoshop and use your color tool. There's one that's called a color picker. Yeah, color picker, thank you. And it will tell you what temperature that is. Or you can choose the one eyedrop that says color balance due to that. And boom, man, the color is beautiful. There's all different shades of colors. There's tints within colors, right? There's RGB, and then there's amber, magenta, cyan, right? And so there's in that little rainbow that you have to move around. So there's a lot of different colors that are possible. But in order to get a real handle on your color, then you just basically use that, which is so much fun. So this is at GaryFong.com. We've got massive resources, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Pentax, Olympus, to tell you, see exactly how to do the things that we show you on the diagrams. That one says the subject is 5.5 feet away from the wall, the collapsible snoot and gel, ETTL -2 exposure correction. I want to tell you about that too. If you want to get really deep colors on your TTL, take the TTL down. Now let me explain why that's important to know. If you're shooting, say, red, okay, and just picture that this is a black and white moment right now, and I'm shooting red. If I shoot it on regular TTL, this will actually turn pink. Does that make sense? Because it's looking for half red. That's something that's a little bit different. So when you're shooting gray, it's looking for something that's half white. Not black, not white, but something in the middle, which is 18% gray. When you're shooting red backgrounds, it is going to turn this into pink. It's going to turn this into light green. It's going to turn this into light blue. So whenever you're shooting with the background and you're kind of frustrated, like, I'm not getting that color, simply take the power down in the rear. And second thing is make sure that your principal light doesn't spill onto the color light. And that's why I have the gel here, or the grill that's on. Where's grill? Down here. I'll put this on here. So that's how this guy goes on. And the cool thing about grill, you see if I turn it, you can't see me. And that's because it's a long tube. And so it comes out as a bunch of long tubes, which means the light goes straight out. That's really cool for a effect when we're using hair light. But the reason why I want to use the grill whenever I'm using backgrounds is because I don't want this white light to spill into my red light, which would then lose the effect. So this is a very sculpting kind of a light. Mounting is really hugely important for two reasons. One is you want something to mount really fast, and you don't want it to fall off in the middle of use. And so this is the 5th generation of the light sphere, and this is something that has gone through so many different changes. This is the most current, and it weighs like nothing. This, here, feel this. It's like it's made out of styrofoam, right? It's really, really light. Yeah. So, and it's not mounted by Velcro. We never put any Velcro on here. What we do is we do have a Velcro belt, and what that does is that actually grips the unit itself. So, and what's cool about this is that you never need to take it off, even when you're shooting direct flash, because all you need to do is point it straight forward. So that's how fast it mounted. Look how strong it mounts. It will not fall off. And this is one thing you don't want to have happen. In my generation 1, I didn't have that. And so people would be up on the balcony and they would shoot and then it would roll down. I had one literally, someone said that it rolled all the way to the front and the bride picked it up and gave it to the photographer. So I said, you know, we got to fix that. But yeah, so what I wanted to do was have something that was really strong, but goes on that fast, you know? I mean, literally, all you do is just take it and just that, right? Just put it right on, give it a little tug, and then it's on, and that's it. And then if you want to fold it back, which you probably don't need to, but you can fold it back and you don't need to take it off, which I think is pretty cool. And then when we mount it, we want to turn it with the sideways like this. And the reason that is so that when I shoot, I can shoot vertical or horizontal and get exactly the same light. Or, which is really cool, if I'm shooting down from a ladder, I can still light up the ceiling. Remember, you've got a mixture between ceiling and subject. Or if I'm on the ground and I'm shooting up, then it looks like this. Because if I was like that, now I've got a problem, right? So we want to light the ceiling right over your couple. And with the dome, you can just simply put the dome on here and you're completely good to go. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to switch over my source. So I'm just going to plug your guy into my Ninja. Yeah? Yeah, so this is an HDMI recorder. I can record video straight into this box. But what I'm using it for today is just to show you what's going through the camera. So this should pop up there right now. There you go. Love it. God, in the old days when I was teaching with Hasselblads, whew, what I wouldn't give to have one of these things. Let's see what this looks like. I'm sorry, it's going to be sideways for the first. Okay, we'll tell you what. Rosalie, ¿puedes venir aquí, por favor? Adelante un poquito más. Okay. Oh, you would have. Let's see, this is now upside down. How do I do this? It's upside down on my screen, so I just want to get this right. And okay, so now I'm going to do a vertical shot just with the light sphere. Okay, so let's zoom. Haz como eso con los pies. Yeah. Perfecto. Okay, so this first one is going to be just on camera flash. Okay, so you see that big shadow next to her, right? Okay, now, that's what you're typically used to getting, and that's why we don't like flash. Okay, so now I am going to put this on, light sphere. And for this one, because I'm going to be turning it sideways, like that, it's still pointing up toward the sky, right? Okay. Perfecto. And there's with the light sphere. So let me just play this so you can see the before and after. Puede sentarse. Ahora. Puede sentarse. Look at that. And there's still a really nice fill on the eyes, right? Does that look like flash? That's why you get the light sphere, is because of that. It'll just really help out with your editing times, but also, holy smokes, what a mess that is. Imagine all your shots looking like that. It looks terrible. Okay, so let me show you how to work off-camera flash. And this is where we get into the fun stuff. So here's the principle. I have 2 off-camera flashes, okay? This guy right here is power group A. Remember I told you the groups are with letters and the frequencies are with numbers. Now why are there different frequencies, like number 1, number 2, number 3? It's because if you have a whole bunch of Godox users in the same spot, then you might be tripping someone else's. So you say, hey, I'm on 2, get off, or whatever. And then you guys can work it out. That's the only reason that is. I usually choose 2 anyway. So this is power group A, power group B. This little guy right here is the radio transmitter. And I love this thing. I mean, God, they're so tiny now and they're so cheap. This is like 80, 90 bucks or something like that, which is just amazing to me. And so when I turn it on, I can trip my flashes remotely. And because it's by radio, it doesn't need to see me. So, and it can go a real far distance away. Let's see, so are you on? Yeah, so let's trip. That's the one. And this is number 2, this is B. Okay. This is power group B, this is power group A. To mount these guys, and this is something, the most basic stuff, I use these little ball heads, these Phottix ball heads. And the reason why, and there's a billion different ball heads to use, but the reason why I like them is because they're just infinitely turnable. And what's really important is when you're shooting this very direct lighting, your subject has to look right into the center of the bowl. If they can't see into the flash, then they're off center. And so this requires a tiny bit of communication between you and your subject to make sure that they're in the beam. Or if not, you can just move around. So this will be the key light. I'm gonna have one as a hair light. And this will just be real simple. I'm just gonna throw an amber beam on here so that we can get a real cool kind of a look. Okay, so this is amber. Color temperature orange, one of those. Okay. Okay. Ahora voy a utilizar la silla. Vení, ya. Tengo que tener una silla. Okay. Now. Puedes sentarse como esto. Sentarse aquí. Incliné esto. Era incliné como esto. Perfecto. Exactamente. ¿Tienes que tener los anteojos? No. Okay. So this is my light stand. And I'm just going to put it right behind her head. And the way you do that, by the way, is you just look at your camera, and if you can't see the camera, it can't see you, okay? So that's it. Now, I've got this all placed with my amber, and all I'm going to want to be able to control at this point would be how much light she gets from that. And that's going to be controlled by here with in conjunction with my TTL. So, quite simple. Just put this guy on. And yeah, check these toys out because they're so much fun. Just real simple, just 3 buttons: power, group, and frequency. And that's it. And that's all you really need to do. And then, of course, the mode, which would be whatever mode you're at, TTL or manual or whatever. We should be popping up on screen. Did I lose my screen connection? It's coming? What happened to my guy? Okay. Oh, it went to sleep. Okay. All right. You guys see this feature here? You guys use this much? It's the eye autofocus on Sony's. This is one of the reasons why I like it. Mueve la cabeza, lado a lado. Yeah. Yeah. Mirando a mí. Yeah. Good. Okay. Perfecto. Okay. Now, tienes que mirar directamente a la luz. ¿Puedes ver la luz? Okay. Pero not directamente, porque vas a ser ciego. Okay, let's see. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change this. Voy a cambiar esto. Okay. Mirando aquí. ¿Lo puedes ver directamente adentro? Okay. Okay. That looks pretty good for available. Nice balanced lighting. Now, I'm going to switch my camera to manual. Okay, and so I'm going to take this shutter speed. Look at this, man. I'm all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. Now, with that camera, power group A, it is now on regular TTL. The one in the back, I have it down by a stop. And, you know, we'll just play with it. Okay, well, so we'll see how it goes. Look at that. How cool is that? That's it. Isn't that fun? You can do this as soon as you check out over there, go downstairs, stand in the line where it says pay, and then the guy will tag you and you can go out. I'm going to take A and I'm going to, but I thought that was perfect as it was. I'm going to take A down 1/3 of stop. Okay. And look at that, guys. That's it. That's all you need for a portrait studio. See, no black background, no fancy stuff, anything like that. That's all I need. Now, let's make it really kind of cool. I'm going to put some colors in the back. So let's do red. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'm going to try red on her hair. What do you think? That'd be kind of interesting. You can do whatever you want. That's the part that's just like... I don't shoot much, so when I'm doing these demos, I go, whoa! Because I design it, and then I think, oh yeah, that would work, but then I never really shoot that much, so this is the only time I get to actually play with it. Okay. Muy bien. And, wow, okay. Roja en el pelo. But she doesn't have red highlights. Now, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go backwards. And on the backwards, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move it way over here. So now I can do this because none of this red light is going to hit her because it's snooted, right? If this was open, then light would go all around the room and it would contaminate my lights. So I can go back here and do... Yeah, so this will be interesting. And this will be, right now, I'm going to just guess that it's going to want a -2. Remember what I said about dark colors in the rear. Yeah, I'm going to move it over just a tiny bit more. That way. And then, okay, now let's crank that power up just a little bit to see if we can get a little more. Ooh, front one didn't go off. That's because I didn't have it on. Here we go. And oh, that's kind of cool. Isn't that neat? I'm going to turn it purple. Let's put in, do we remember our primary colors? I do because my kids are learning them. Dad, you're a photographer. You should know what the primary colors are. Okay, so that. Now, because I put in a little bit more stuff back there, I'm going to need just a tiny bit more power because we've probably lost a stop in that. So let's try purple. See how that works. I put it on the wrong one, but that's actually kind of cool.
Kind of alien.
Yeah, right? Wow. I actually really like that. I mean, it's just so cool. Like I said, you can do anything. That's called a reptilian. Do you know what reptilians are? You do? You really do?
Yeah.
No kidding. You know they're coming, right? So let's try purple. They're here already, yeah. I am one of them. I can shapeshift. I just did it. Okay, let's try purple. God, I really like that. That's just so darn cool. It's like we put makeup on, huh? You know? Okay, so let's see what purple does. Nope, didn't do it. That's really interesting. Purple is sometimes kind of hard to tell. Oh, I don't know why it's not going. I must have done something wrong. Okay, let's try green. What did I do for the first one? Red? Okay, let's do blue.
No, orange.
Orange would be the two together, right? Yellow and... Oh, I did orange for the first one? Did I?
No.
Oh, I totally don't remember.
For the hairlight, you did.
Oh, I did right for the hair light. Yeah, exactly. So, group B. Okay. And perfect, there's blue. I'm going to take it down just a tiny bit so you guys can see what it looks like when I change the...
Which intensity are you using right now?
So the first one is on regular TTL. Okay. And that I love regular TTL because it's always perfect. And then the one in the back I can play with, but right now it's -2. -2 is usually the case. Let me show you if I go full TTL on B, so you guys can see what that looks like, and you won't see much blue. It'll be a light blue. It won't be as, see? I mean, it's still cool, but like I said, it's between blue and white, which would be kind of a light blue. So anyway, that is that. I'm going to try one. I'm going to do it with red so you guys can see what it looks like when I go regular exposure on red. But that's as easy as it is to do, just that. Okay, so we'll do red at regular TTL and see what it gives me. Group B, regular TTL. Okay, here it comes, and so I'll do it again at -1 or -2 so you can kind of see. And this is all stuff that you can just play with on your own, see what color you like. But in the same way that I can change my exposure, I can also change the intensity of the color. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. That's really cool.
Can you do black and white?
Oh yeah, let's do black and white. In fact, I'm going to use you. Puedes cambiar con ello? So let's go to black and white. Function, creative style. Thanks for asking, because I always forget. To shoot such handsome, attractive men. Okay, so there's my black and white. And so what I'm going to do here is we're going to go exactly 3 o'clock. I like that you've got glasses too. That's super cool. Okay, and let's see. Just put that on there for now. Make sure that that's right on you. And then again, we'll play around with this just a tiny bit. But it's my best guess right now. I think it's a tiny bit low. Okay. That is group A, and let's just see how this looks. Oh, so yeah, 3200th of a second. Boom. Too hot. That means that A needs to go down. Let's try this now. Ooh. That's kind of cool, huh? Yeah.
That was just B?
That was just B. A, just A. A at -2. Black and white. Let me get someone else up here that's... You got a beard. I want the beard guy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure.
Where's the pipe?
And you're next. You. You know who you are. You're next. Okay, perfect. And wow. I don't know. It's pretty darn cool. Okay, switch with him.
That last one was 0 or
They're all mine. They're all 0. Yep. Oh yeah. Nope. Look toward that way just a little bit more. Gah! I don't know. I really like it. I don't do this much, so I'm easy to please. But isn't that cool? Yeah. I really love the dynamic range of these things too. In the old days, it would have been really wiped out. And this is a TV, so it's very contrasty. But when I look in here, I can definitely see, not on the TV, but on there, it's much less contrasting. It looks really, really beautiful. You can make a nice black and white print out of that. Okay, well, thank you so much.